The misleading silence, the unseen cracks. You feel it, don't you? That persistent hum beneath the surface of your days. It's not a sudden crash, no single event you can pinpoint as the definite start. It's more like a slow tide pulling away, leaving the shores of your inner world barren, exposed. Or perhaps it's like noticing the first almost imperceptible crack in a beautiful vase, a vase you've painstakingly crafted, representing your life. For a while you could ignore it, pretend it wasn't there, but the crack has begun to spread, hasn't it? The colors of your world seem muted, as if a fine layer of dust has settled over everything. The laughter of others, once infectious, now feels like a distant echo from a room you're no longer in. You move through the motions of your life, nodding, agreeing, playing the part assigned to you, the part you assigned yourself. But inside, there's a hollowness, a quiet so profound it's louder than any external chaos, a silence that screams. You've likely named it. Society has given it a neat, clinical label: depression. A malfunction of chemistry, they say. A glitch in the system. Something to be efficiently managed. You've been told it's something to be fixed, medicated back into compliance. Perhaps even something to carry with a subtle shame, a sign of weakness. But what if that label, that entire framework, while acknowledging real suffering, is a profound misunderstanding of something far deeper? What if this aching void, this landscape of inner winter, isn't a sign that you're fundamentally broken, but an urgent, primal signal that something monumental, something vital, is trying to be born within you? Carl Jung, one of history's most influential explorers of the human psyche, experienced a period of intense inner turmoil, a disorienting journey into profound darkness that lasted for several years. He didn't pathologize it as a mere illness. He called it his confrontation with the unconscious, a necessary descent. And from this perilous, often terrifying voyage into his own depths, he brought back a unique treasure, the Red Book, or Liber Novus. A work so intensely personal, so raw in its depiction of his inner world, he kept it from widespread publication during his lifetime. It's a chronicle of vivid visions, startling dialogues with figures that emerged from within him, a hand-drawn map of the soul's often ignored underworld. And within its cryptic, symbolic pages lies a potent message, a potential lifeline, for those of you who feel lost in a similar fog, adrift in an ocean of unexplained sorrow. This isn't about dismissing or trivializing real suffering. The pain you feel is undeniable. The exhaustion that seeps into your bones is real. The desire for relief is completely natural. But Jung's experience, as so vividly detailed in the Red Book, suggests a revolutionary idea. What we commonly call depression isn't always a sickness of the mind in the way we're taught. Sometimes, perhaps more often than we realize, it's the soul refusing to continue its participation in a life that no longer resonates with its truth, a life it no longer recognizes as authentic. It's an awakening, a fierce, often terrifying, summons to a deeper, more authentic self, a self you may have forgotten, or perhaps never truly known. Part 2. The Soul's Withdrawal, when the mask no longer breathes. Think about the life you've constructed, brick by painstaking brick. The roles you play, the ever-reliable employee, the endlessly supportive friend, the perfect, uncomplaining partner, the strong one who never cracks under pressure. Are these roles truly you, or are they costumes you've worn for so long you've forgotten the skin beneath? Consider the goals you've chased, often prescribed by a world that loudly values outward achievement, material success, and social approval over the quiet whispers of inner alignment. You've built a persona, haven't you? A carefully crafted mask, designed to navigate the complex terrain of society, to gain acceptance, to feel safe, to be liked, perhaps even to be loved. But what happens when the mask becomes too tight, too rigid, too suffocating? What happens when the soul, your true, untamed essence, can no longer breathe beneath it? Jung proposed that depression is the soul withdrawing from a life it no longer recognizes as real. Imagine your soul as a vital energy, a life force. When it's poured into endeavors and relationships that are fundamentally misaligned with its nature, it's like trying to power a great machine with the wrong kind of fuel. It sputters, it falters, it begins to shut down. This withdrawal isn't a malfunction, it's a profound act of self-preservation, a desperate rebellion. Your passions feel dead, not because they've vanished entirely, but because the very energy that once fueled them is being recalled, drawn inward for a more urgent, more fundamental task. The rediscovery of your authentic self. You wake up tired, bone-achingly weary, because the sheer effort of maintaining a false front, of living a life that isn't truly yours, is profoundly, spiritually exhausting. It's like acting in a play, 24 hours a day, with no intermission. People ask, "What's wrong?" Their brows furrow with concern, or perhaps impatience, and you have no words. How do you explain that the life everyone else seems to validate, the life you should be happy with, feels like a beautifully constructed, gilded cage? How do you articulate that the numbness you feel is actually a protest against the pervasive superficiality you encounter, both in the world and, perhaps, within yourself? This isn't merely a chemical imbalance, though brain chemistry is undoubtedly involved in how we experience these states. It's often, at its root, a soul imbalance. The life you've so carefully curated, the one that ticks all the external boxes, might be a masterpiece of conformity, but it's simultaneously starving your authentic self, the wild, unique core of your being. This is what Jung meant by the crucial confrontation with the unconscious. It's that pivotal moment when the neglected parts of you, the aspects you've deemed unacceptable, your shadows, your repressed desires, your unlived potentials, your inconvenient truths, begin to stir from their slumber. They don't politely knock on the door of your consciousness. They often erupt, creating a sense of inner chaos, profound disorientation, a feeling that the very ground beneath your feet is unstable. You feel lost because the old maps, the old rules and beliefs that once guided you, no longer lead anywhere meaningful. You are in essence being dragged, sometimes kicking and screaming, into the underworld of your own psyche. Not to be destroyed, Jung would argue, but to be disassembled and remade, more authentically, more wholly. Part 3. The Descent into Truth. Meeting your inner inhabitants. The Red Book stands as Jung's powerful testament to this harrowing, yet ultimately vital, inner journey. He didn't shy away from the encroaching darkness, from the terrifying visions and unsettling emotions. He stepped directly into it. He engaged, he conversed, with figures that emerged from the depths of his unconscious. Philemon, who appeared as a wise old man with kingfisher wings, serving as an inner guru or guide. Salome, a blind young woman representing a complex eros, the dangerous allure of the unknown. And the serpent, an ancient symbol of primal energy, healing and danger. He saw landscapes within himself that were both terrifying and numinous. He heard voices that were not his own, yet originated from within. To an outside observer, armed with the conventional labels of the time, it might have seemed like a descent into madness. But Jung, with his profound courage and intellectual honesty, understood that these weren't external entities to be feared or eradicated. They were personified aspects of his own psyche, parts of his soul demanding recognition, integration. Now, ask yourself, what if the figures you're battling in your own quiet despair, that relentless inner critic that magnifies every flaw, the insidious voice of hopelessness that whispers, "What's the use?" the heavy weight of apathy that makes every action feel monumental, are not simply enemies to be vanquished? What if they too are messengers, albeit distorted and painful ones? Messengers from a part of you that has been silenced, ignored, or shamed for far too long. What if the monster in your basement is just a forgotten child, crying out for attention? Jung famously wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. We construct elaborate lives, fill every spare moment with noise, with distractions, with endless tasks and superficial connections, all to avoid the terrifying, transformative silence where the soul speaks its unvarnished truth." But if you're feeling this profound disquiet, this deep ache that no external comfort can soothe, it means you've likely stopped running, or perhaps, more accurately, you've been caught by your own inner truth. The pain, as intense as it is, isn't random. It's a message carrier. Your so-called depression, in this Jungian light, is trying to tell you something incredibly important, that the self you've been performing, the mask you've been wearing, is no longer sustainable. It's an addiction to a persona, a false self, that has run its course, and your soul is staging an intervention. Imagine yourself, as we discussed, in that house, a house representing your life. Every room is filled with the expectations and performances you've meticulously maintained for years. You've smiled when you wanted to scream. You've adapted when you wanted to rebel. You've strived to belong even when it felt like you were betraying yourself. But now, you've slipped away, not by choice perhaps, but by an irresistible inner pull, down into the basement of your being. It's dim, it's cold, the air is thick with disuse, and you're utterly alone. This is the point where most people panic. They scramble frantically back upstairs to the familiar noise, the superficial comfort, the well-lit distractions of the upper floors. But if you stay, if you find the courage to simply sit in that uncomfortable, echoing silence long enough, something extraordinary begins to happen. A whisper emerges, not from outside, but from somewhere deep within the foundations of your being. And one of those whispers, clear and undeniable, says, "I've been waiting for you." That's your real self. The authentic core you abandoned or suppressed long ago to fit in, to survive, to be deemed acceptable by a world that often fears true individuality. Part 4. The symptoms of a deeper calling, decoding the soul's language. This awakening, this psychic death of the old self, as Jung might frame it, doesn't feel like a gentle poetic sunrise filtering through your window. It often feels like a violent storm, a demolition. It looks, from the outside and even from the inside, like you're falling apart. And the symptoms, the very experiences that get labeled as depression, are frequently misread as a worsening of your condition, rather than the painful, necessary labor of a new, more authentic self trying to break free and emerge. Let's look closer at these signs, not as pathologies, but as communications from your soul. 1. Your relationships start to shift, to strain, or even to collapse. Conversations that once felt engaging, or at least tolerable, now seem unbearably shallow, performative, draining. You find you can no longer summon the energy to participate in the old dances of superficiality. Your tolerance for inauthenticity, both in your own behavior and in that of others, plummets. You might withdraw not out of malice or intentional cruelty, but because your precious energy is being fiercely commandeered for this critical inner work. Friends, family, partners might observe this change with confusion, hurt, or even anger. They might say you've changed, that you're distant, cold, no longer the person they knew. And they are right. The version of you they knew, the one that perhaps consistently overgave, endlessly compromised, or molded itself to their needs and expectations, is dissolving. This can be painful for everyone involved, but it's a sign that you're no longer willing to betray yourself for external approval. 2. You begin to grieve the old you. This can be profoundly confusing. Why would you mourn a self that was, in many ways, a source of constraint, a prison of your own making? Because that mask, that persona, however limiting, was also a deeply ingrained survival strategy. It protected you, in its own way. It helped you navigate a world that often rewards conformity and punishes raw, unapologetic authenticity. Letting go of the people-pleaser, the relentless perfectionist, the stoic sufferer who never asked for help, it feels like losing a part of yourself, a familiar companion, and in a way, it is. You are shedding a skin. Allow yourself to feel that grief. It's not a step backward. That emptiness you feel isn't a void of nothingness. It's the clearing of sacred space, where something truer, something more aligned with your soul, is finally being allowed to grow. 3. You experience emotional whiplash, a bewildering roller coaster of feelings. One moment, you might touch a profound sense of peace, a surprising clarity you haven't felt in years. The next, you're engulfed by inexplicable rage, a deep, ancient sadness that brings tears without warning, or a paralyzing anxiety about everything and nothing. Then, perhaps, a strange, detached numbness descends, followed by a fragile flicker of hope, only for a wave of despair to return. You might think you're going crazy, but Jung would understand this as the unconscious disgorging its long-held contents. The unhealed childhood wounds, the suppressed guilt, the righteous anger you were never allowed to express, the secret fantasies you were too ashamed to even admit to yourself. They are all surfacing, not to torment you endlessly, but to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be felt, and ultimately, to be integrated into a more complete version of you. This is the definition of messy, but it's necessary chaos, the stirring of the alchemical pot. 4. External validation loses its potent grip. The likes on social media, the promotions at work, the applause from the crowd, they no longer provide the same satisfying hit, the same sense of worthiness they once did. You might pour your heart into something meaningful, share a vulnerable truth, and if it's met with indifference or misunderstanding, it doesn't shatter you in the way it once might have. You begin to realize with a dawning clarity that the relentless pursuit of external approval was a powerful drug, a cage keeping your true self sedated and compliant. Now that you're beginning the detox process, you find yourself becoming addicted to something else entirely: the quiet strength of silence, the profound nourishment of solitude, the unshakable dignity of self-respect. 5. You become an unintentional mirror. This is perhaps one of the most unexpected and challenging consequences of stepping into your authenticity. As you become more real, more aligned with your inner truth, your very presence can begin to trigger those who are still deeply invested in maintaining their own masks, their own illusions. Your calm honesty might be perceived as a harsh judgment. Your newfound, necessary boundaries might be experienced as personal rejection or abandonment. You tell your simple truth, and they feel uncomfortably exposed. Without intending to, you become a mirror, reflecting back to people the parts of themselves they are not yet ready or willing to face. It's not your intention to provoke, but your authenticity inevitably illuminates the inauthentic, both in yourself and in others. Remember, it's not your job to make their reflection palatable or pretty. Jung himself faced this intense crucible. He was called mad by some, his revolutionary ideas dismissed by many of his more conventional contemporaries. But he understood a fundamental truth: there is no coming to consciousness without pain. This awakening, this journey home to yourself, is a sacrifice. You sacrifice the illusion of being universally liked for the reality of being whole. You sacrifice the superficial comfort of illusion for the often challenging, but deeply rewarding, reality of being truly alive. Part 5. The purpose of the darkness. Kindling light in mere being. Our modern society, with its relentless focus on quick fixes and perpetual positivity, wants you to fix your depression, to smooth over the cracks, to silence the dissent, to get back to normal as quickly as possible. Because, let's be honest, a person who is truly awakening, who is listening to the dictates of their own soul, is dangerous to the status quo. They can no longer be easily manipulated by fear or superficial desire. They begin to see through the collective illusions, the carefully constructed narratives that keep people compliant and consuming. They live by an inner compass, not by external directives. They question. They seek meaning beyond the material. The Red Book revealed that the sole purpose of human existence, as Jung came to see it through his own profound immersion in the unconscious, is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. He believed the soul withdraws from conscious life, from our everyday awareness, not because it's inherently flawed or broken, but because it's being systematically ignored, starved, and devalued. Ignored by your constant performance of a socially acceptable self, ignored by your attachments to superficial things and fleeting pleasures, ignored by your desperate, culturally conditioned need to keep everything appearing normal, pleasant, and under control. So what did Jung do when his own soul withdrew? when he found himself in that terrifying inner landscape. He didn't try to fix it with superficial remedies or force himself back into his old patterns. He followed it. He had the courage to follow it into visions that defied logic, into myths that resonated with ancient human experiences, into what the world might label madness. The Red Book is filled with his meticulous records of these symbolic landscapes, vast, arid deserts representing spiritual dryness, encounters with serpents symbolizing primal energy and transformation, visions of imposing towers and crumbling ruins signifying old structures of the psyche. He called this inner terrain the collective unconscious, a universal reservoir of human experience, a realm of primordial images and archetypes, far older than your personal history, older than your culture, older even than your name. And in this often daunting realm, he found not just chaos and fear, but profound transformative messages, guidance from the deepest strata of his being. The figures he encountered, like the wise Philemon or the shadowy Red One, a figure representing raw, instinctual power and suppressed desire, weren't just random hallucinations caused by a disturbed mind. They were, in his understanding, personified aspects of his own psyche, vital fragments of himself that had been forgotten, rejected, suppressed, or buried under the weight of societal expectation and personal repression. And here's the crucial insight for you today. This depression, this overwhelming state of being, is often an invasion of truth. A difficult, uncomfortable, but ultimately liberating truth. Truth about the myriad compromises you've made, perhaps unconsciously, throughout your life. Truth about the widening gap between the life you're currently living and the life your soul genuinely yearns for. The numbness, the exhaustion, the apathy, these are not just random symptoms. They are urgent signals from your psyche, a desperate plea to go deeper, to stop living solely on the surface, to attend to the urgent business of your soul. This is not a passive process of simply waiting for the storm to pass. It's an initiation. It demands immense courage and a willingness to feel what feels unbearable. You lose motivation for the old life because it no longer holds meaning. You lose clarity about the old goals because they were never truly yours. You may even lose people who cannot or will not accompany you into this deeper territory. You certainly lose your old familiar identity, the one you thought was you. But beneath the ashes of that old self, something new, something incredibly resilient, fiercely authentic, and uniquely you, is struggling, pushing, fighting to be born. Part 6. Navigating the in-between, the alchemical chamber. So, you've felt the profound ache that settles deep in your bones. You've sat in the deafening silence where your own thoughts become strange echoes. Perhaps you've witnessed old relationships, once central to your life, fray and dissolve, or watched cherished identities crumble like ancient stone. You're acutely aware that you're not who you were, but you're not yet fully, clearly, who you are becoming. You are suspended in the liminal space, the in-between, the chrysalis. This, Jung would suggest, is the alchemical chamber, the sacred container where true transformation occurs. It's not about forcing your way out with sheer willpower, nor is it about endlessly reciting affirmations that don't yet ring true in your core. It's about surrender. A courageous surrender to the profound, often mysterious process that is unfolding within you. Carl Jung didn't become a towering figure in the history of psychology by neatly avoiding his inner chaos or by finding a quick fix for his disorientation. He became profoundly influential because he walked through it, consciously, meticulously, bravely. And he returned from that inner odyssey not just with abstract theories, but with a palpable fire, a deep experiential understanding of the vastness and power of the human soul. Here's how you, too, can navigate this challenging passage, not as a passive victim of circumstance, but as a soul actively participating in its own rising. 1. Let go of the incessant need to be understood by everyone. You've likely spent a significant portion of your life trying to explain yourself, to justify your feelings, to make your choices palatable to your parents, your friends, your colleagues, society at large. No more. This is a profound liberation. As Jung implied, to be misunderstood by those still operating from a different level of consciousness is often the unavoidable price of stepping into your authenticity. Your inner truth doesn't require external validation to be real and powerful. Some people will inevitably call you selfish now, perhaps cold, strange, distant, or not yourself. Let them. Their reactions are more about their own maps of reality than about your essential being. Your precious energy is better spent on your inner alignment and integration than on managing their perceptions or seeking their approval. 2. Profoundly accept that you are not who you thought you were, and that this is okay, even good. Your old identity, the one you presented to the world and perhaps even to yourself, was largely a construct of survival. It was skillfully built, consciously or unconsciously, in response to past hurts, societal conditioning, childhood programming, and the deep universal human need to be loved and accepted. Perhaps you thought you were inherently strong because you never showed vulnerability or shed a tear. Perhaps you believed you were exceptionally kind because you rarely, if ever, said no, even to your own detriment. Perhaps you convinced yourself you were healed because you kept relentlessly busy, never allowing a moment of stillness. Now, with the clearer vision that this inner work brings, you begin to see these traits and behaviors for what they often were: compensations, defense mechanisms, sophisticated survival strategies. Letting go of that carefully crafted, long-held self feels like a death because, in a very real psychological sense, it is a death. You are mourning a version of yourself who was, at their core, just trying to be safe, to be loved, to belong. Don't hate that past self. Don't shame them. Thank them for their incredible service in getting you this far. Then gently, with reverence, bury them and walk forward into the unknown, lighter, freer. 3. Cultivate your silence as a sacred practice. Jung didn't just think his way through his profound descent. He actively listened. He journaled obsessively. He painted his visions. He engaged in what he called active imagination, a dialogue with the figures of his unconscious. He treated his inner world and the silence required to access it like a temple, not a place of punishment or emptiness. This is what you must begin to do now. Don't instinctively flee from the silence when it descends. Don't immediately reach for your phone, the television, or any other distraction. Instead, consciously, deliberately, enter it. Let it speak to you in its own subtle language. Let its echoes reveal what your busy, chattering mind has never dared to face. Your silence is not empty. It is pregnant with the wisdom of your soul, full of truths you've never been able to hear because the world and your own mind were always too loud. 4. Consciously write your new inner commandments, your soul's declaration of independence. As the old structures of your life, your old beliefs and values begin to dissolve, don't rush to rebuild the exact same thing on the same shaky foundations. Build different. Build stronger. Build truer. Create a new internal code, a set of guiding principles that resonate with the emerging authentic you. For instance, I no longer trade my authenticity for anyone's acceptance. I fiercely protect my peace and my energy as sacred, because they are. I walk away from situations and relationships that drain or diminish me, without guilt or lengthy explanation. I commit to expressing what is real and true for me, even when it's not easy or popular. My inherent worth is self-evident and requires no external endorsement or validation. I give love freely from a place of fullness, but I will never again beg or bargain for it. Let this new evolving code become your anchor, your internal compass. Because the outer world, with its old habits and expectations, will inevitably try to pull you back into familiar but outgrown patterns. And when it does, your new emerging self will be able to smile with quiet confidence and say, "Thank you, but I don't live there anymore." 5. Transcend the limiting label of depression itself. This may be one of the most challenging, yet liberating steps. Hear it fully. You are not your diagnosis. While your suffering is absolutely real, deeply felt, and valid, The label of depression, once applied, can inadvertently become another box, another identity, another limitation that keeps you stuck. Jung, through the lens of the Red Book, saw such profound states of inner turmoil not as definitive endpoints or chronic illnesses to be merely managed, but as crucial phases of a larger, sacred, archetypal journey of descent, confrontation, and eventual rebirth. Stop trying with all your might to get back to the person you were before the darkness came. That person, in many ways, was a precursor, an earlier draft of you. The darkness itself, the descent, is an integral part of your becoming, the fertile ground from which your truer self will emerge. This isn't about magically becoming someone entirely new out of thin air overnight. It's about a courageous, often painstaking process of stripping away everything that was never truly you in the first place. It's an archaeological dig of the soul, a careful excavation of the authentic self that was buried, layer by layer, beneath years of social conditioning, familial expectations, and personal fears. Part 7. Rising with Sight, the unveiling of the true self. As you learn to surrender to this profound inner process, as you bravely sit with your shadows without flinching, and as you begin to consistently honor and listen to your inner truth, you will begin to change. Not by force, not by relentless self-improvement projects, but by a natural, organic unfolding, like a flower turning towards the sun. You start saying no, not with aggression, but with a quiet, firm clarity, and without the crushing, habitual weight of guilt. You find yourself effortlessly leaving rooms or situations that drain your spirit or insult your soul. You learn to take restorative breaks before you reach the point of burnout, honoring your body's wisdom. You stop performing for love or approval, realizing that authentic connection can only arise from a place of genuine self-acceptance and truth. You will find that you no longer desperately need the world to validate your existence, to tell you that you are okay, that you are worthy. You begin to remember, on a cellular level, that you were real, you were whole, you were inherently worthy, long before you learned to seek external rewards or praise for being a certain, acceptable way. This journey, this profound awakening often disguised as darkness and despair, doesn't promise a life of perpetual, saccharine happiness, or an escape from all future pain. It promises something far more valuable, far more enduring, reality, a deep connection to your authentic self and to the truth of your experience. You will walk differently through the world, not with an inflated ego or arrogance, but with a quiet gravity, a centered presence, an unmistakable aura of someone who has met themselves in the depths. You will move not to impress, not to gain, but simply to exist, authentically, fully. You will inevitably lose some people along the way. Let them go, with grace if possible. Their chapter in your evolving story may be over, and that's a natural part of growth. You will still question yourself at times. Doubts are part of the human condition. Keep walking, keep listening inward. You will undoubtedly feel profoundly alone at times, as this is a deeply personal journey. But in that transformative solitude, you will meet, truly meet, the one person who truly matters, the one who has been patiently waiting for you all along, your true self. The self that didn't run from the fire, the self that stayed present in the storm, the self that had the courage to sit with the shadows and keep breathing, even through the deafening silence. This experience, this profound shift, is not a sign of failure, not a breakdown in the conventional sense, not a fundamental defect in your being. Carl Jung's Red Book, and indeed his entire life's work, illuminate a profound and empowering possibility. What you've been calling depression, what the world has labeled as a disorder, may in fact be the intense, disorienting labor pains of your soul's awakening. You are not depressed in the way the world narrowly defines it. You are remembering who you truly are, beneath all the layers. And this, believe it or not, isn't the end of your story. In many ways, you're just getting started. The darkness was never meant to be a full stop, a final destination. It was meant to be a door, a threshold. And you, brave soul, have dared to approach it, to touch it, perhaps even to push it open. Now, step through, into the light of your own hard-won truth.